Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode of Jewish Anytime's 30-Day Elul Learning Challenge. I'm happy and in fact thrilled to be here again to share some thoughts with you. So we're getting pretty close. Elul is wrapping up and we're getting very close to Rosh Hashanah. And of course, I'm sure one thing you've probably noticed is that as you see people now, more and more, people are wishing each other the same thing. Well, have a great, happy, sweet new year. And the reason, of course, that we do that is because we know that coming up on Rosh Hashanah, Hashem is going to decide what our upcoming year is going to be like. And we want ourselves and our friends and our loved ones, and frankly, everyone we know, that they should have a great, sweet year. Of course, what this really means is something we talk about, but sometimes like to dance around a little bit, is that on Rosh Hashanah, Hashem is judging us. And the concept of judgment, well, it's a little bit uncomfortable. In fact, it can actually be downright scary. You know, the Talmud talks about the idea that the book of life and the book of death is open in front of Hashem, and he's deciding whose names to inscribe into where. And from that perspective, the idea of being judged, it's the kind of thing that I think most of us, if we're really honest with ourselves, we'd rather avoid for some pretty obvious reasons. But here's what's interesting. The Torah actually calls Rosh Hashanah a holiday. And what do you do on a holiday? Well, the Talmud actually talks out how the Jewish people are praised because the way that we walk into our Yom Hadin, our day of judgment, is, I guess the custom back in the time of the Talmud is that a person who was being judged would wear dark black clothing and they would be unkempt. And they'd need to shave or a haircut and take a shower. Their fingernails would grow long because they were trying to show the heaviness of the judgment and that they were taking it seriously. But that's not how the Jewish people behave. When we're walking into our Yom Hadin, we get haircuts, we take showers, we shave, we cut our nails, we're wearing white clothing. Maybe not necessarily white clothing, of the men obviously have accustomed to wear a kittel, many of us. But even if you're not wearing white clothing, you're wearing your best, nicest clothing. And we eat, unlike any good Jewish holiday, we eat fantastic, delicious foods. And the Talmud praises the Jewish people for behaving this way, that we walk into this day of judgment with this sense of confidence. But it's just kind of weird. I mean, how do we treat it like a holiday if we don't know what Hashem is going to decide our year is going to be like? In many ways, it seems to be more appropriate to treat it with a certain heaviness, to be a certain amount of being scared. Like, why are we acting that way? It just seems such a strange way to approach a day of judgment. Now, of course, if we are really being judged, imagine for yourself that you are being judged. You're walking into court. You know you're guilty. The judge knows you're guilty. The prosecutor knows you're guilty. The jury knows or know that you're going to know that you're guilty. Like, what would you do in that situation? I think every sense of self-preservation tells us that what you do in that situation is you confess, don't try to hide from it, and throw yourself on the mercy of the court. And yet we do not do that on Rosh Hashanah when we are in shul, when we are in synagogue davening. In fact, there is not, other than a couple of actually late additions to the prayer book that came much later, the core davening on Rosh Hashanah makes zero mention of any sort of sin or any sort of confession or any focus on things we've done wrong. It's not in there at all. And again, if we're being judged, you want to behave in a way that's most likely to get you to the right result, to the right judgment. So why is it that we don't even make any mention of it? Well, and actually, if you want to take it a step further, if you look in the Torah doesn't make any mention of it either. In fact, other than a reference to the shofar, the Torah gives us zero indication that Rosh Hashanah is a day of judgment. And it's sort of like, what exactly is going on over here? If we're actually being judged, it seems like we're almost being set up to fail, if you would, because we're not actually taking the judgment, taking the things that we're being judged on. We're not approaching them. We're not addressing them. We're almost like putting our heads in the sand. We're showing up as if everything's great. You know, that guy who shows up in court laughing and smiling and he's eating a good meal, like the judge and the jury look at him like, don't you understand what's going on over here? Don't you understand how serious this is? And that seems to be the way that we're doing it. So why would we approach judgment this way if we want to make sure that we're going to have that sweet year that we keep wishing everyone, that everyone keeps wishing us? Okay, so one place to start to try to understand, I think, Look, we spend a tremendous amount of time in shul, in synagogue, on Rosh Hashanah, going through davening, going through the prayers. So probably the right place to start is with those prayers. So interestingly, as I mentioned, the concept, the topic of judgment does not get mentioned. Again, a couple of minor mentions that were added in later. But if you look at like the core of most of davening, of most of the prayers, there's no mention of judgment whatsoever. In fact, if you pay close attention, you start to notice a certain theme that actually runs throughout the Rosh Hashanah tefillos, the Rosh Hashanah prayers. And that's the idea of recognizing that Hashem is our creator and our king. And is a constant concept that we come to over and over again, mentioning the fact that Hashem is our king. And there's one other line that's kind of right in the middle. Like when you hit this line, you know you've kind of hit the halfway point. And that line is, Zeh Hayom, this is the day, Techilas Ma'asecha, the beginning of your works, Zikaron Liyom Rishon, a remembrance to the first day. What this means is, just kind of simply translating, is that today is the day that Hashem created the world. Because the way the world, when the world was actually created, the Rosh Hashanah is the first day of the month of Tishrei. The world was actually created. The first day of creation was on the 25th day of the month of Elul, 6 days or so before Rosh Hashanah. What was created on the first day of Tishrei? Adam Harishon. First man was created on Rosh Hashanah. And the entirety of the world we know was created in order to create, as we've talked about many times, this sort of relationship between Hashem and humankind. And so Adam, he was the one. The day that he was created, that's the day that we say is really the beginning of the world, because all the creation that took place until that point was there simply to get everything ready for Adam, for Adam. Now, the thing is like this, it's interesting, these words, Zeh Hayom Tchilas Ma'asecha. This is the day, the beginning of your creations. Now, taken literally, that doesn't seem to be exactly true, because we don't think that Hashem's creating the world today. Really, it seems like this is a remembrance, which is the second half of that line. But why are we saying that this is the day that Hashem created the world? Hashem created the world thousands of years ago. So actually, we have a little bit of a mistaken impression or mistaken understanding of how it is that Hashem created the world. You see, we think that Hashem created the world, and that was it. It's sort of like that old infomercial, and I'm probably dating myself by even mentioning this. You know, that infomercial, set it and forget it. That Hashem created the world, and it kind of just goes. But that's not exactly how it actually works. And of course, it's hard for us to really discern this because it's not visible to the naked eye. But the way that the rabbis explain things actually worked, that Hashem actually created the world 1 year at a time. And Hashem has a plan for the world from the beginning to the end. And every year, he stops and he takes stock of the world to see what's actually going on. How is it going? Because Hashem has a plan. And it's not just Hashem created the world and we kind of just behave and live our way through it. There's things that Hashem wants to happen. These are things that are beyond our understanding. But Hashem gives us a little bit of a view, a little bit of an insight into it in order that we can understand him better. But so every year in Rosh Hashanah, Hashem stops and takes stock. Very similar, the best sort of way to envision this or to think about it is a business owner. If you own a business, every year, at least once a year, you're going to go through an annual review. And you're going to see what's going on in the business. What are different initiatives that I've tried? How have they been going? You review all of your employees. You review your relationship with your various customers. You look at every aspect of the business and try to see, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? So that come this upcoming year, the business will thrive. And things that need to be fixed will be fixed. And things that need to be done away with, or people that need to be let go, will be let go. Because the purpose just isn't quite working the way that it's supposed to. Hashem does the same thing with the entirety of the world. Hashem looks at all of the world, things that we can't even imagine how they fit in, and he tries to see, is everything working the way that it's supposed to? Where do I need to make tweaks? Mankind has free will. So they may not be doing the things that they're supposed to be doing as a group, and the world is not going the way that it needs to go. So Hashem says, I need to sort of make adjustments. And the same way that that's true for the entirety of the world, that's true as well for each one of us, specifically us as Jews individually. Hashem has a plan for every single one of us. As you've heard me say many times, and you've heard from many other people, Hashem doesn't do duplicates. If you're in this world, it's because Hashem has a very specific plan, a mission that you and only you can accomplish. Come Rosh Hashanah, Hashem wants to know, how are you doing? What are you doing with the gifts that I've given you? What are you doing with the things that you have in your possession, the abilities that you have? Are you becoming the best version of yourself? Are you becoming the person that can fulfill the mission that I have for you, that only you can fulfill? What are you doing? How are you getting there? And so the judgment that we talk about in Rosh Hashanah is specifically Hashem's looking at on a go-forward basis. So here's the thing. I once had an associate that worked for me, and he came time for his annual review, and he did not really have a great year. He didn't. For whatever reason, his performance was suboptimal, as we like to say. And so I'm sitting with one of my partners, we're having a conversation going through his annual review, and kind of like, leading to a point where we're sort of going to give him what we used to call the proverbial tap on the shoulder. That's just not working. And he heard the message, and he came back to us a week later with a very detailed plan that he came up with as to how he was going to improve his performance. And he basically showed us how he was recommitting himself to the job. And he did a very convincing job. He was clearly sincere about it. And we heard this, my partner and I, after he left, we talked about it. We thought about it and said, look, you know what? He clearly wants to do better. Why wouldn't we give him another opportunity? Hashem does things the same way. Because he's looking forward about what our mission is for the upcoming year, our prior year, it's not really dispositive. The fact that we may have fallen short in one way or more in how we were supposed to be living our lives and the things we were supposed to be doing in that year, okay, not great. But that doesn't mean that go forward, we can't turn it around. We can't recommit ourselves. We can't decide that from now on, we're going to kill it. And Hashem says, that's what I want. Ultimately, Hashem wants us to be the best version of ourselves that we can. He's not trying to trick us. He's not trying to make it hard on us. He's not trying to punish us for things that we may have gone wrong, for the things that we may have done the wrong way. Hashem wants us to be better. And come Rosh Hashanah, the judgment is about the future. So we don't spend any time on Rosh Hashanah talking about the prior year. We don't spend any time confessing things that we may have done wrong. That's Yom Kippur. We'll talk about that later. What Rosh Hashanah is about is recognizing that Hashem, you're my creator, you're my king, you're my father. I want to make things better. I want to be better. And the only thing we should be thinking about when it comes to our prior year is in the days leading up to Rosh Hashanah, it makes some sense to think about a little bit where we can do better and come up with some sort of action plan. Not crazy. Don't decide you're going to completely change every aspect of your life, because that's unlikely to happen on a dime. That's how people are wired. But small, measurable changes you can make in your life. When you look at it from that perspective, it's a judgment, but it's not a scary kind of judgment. We don't need to look at it as, oh my gosh, I need to throw myself on the mercy of the court. Because Hashem's not out to get us. He wants us to be our best, most awesome selves. So what we need to do is just recommit ourselves to it, to show Hashem, here's how I'm going to try to make myself better. I'm not going to spend time dwelling on the past. I'm going to spend time focusing on you, Hashem, how I can make myself better in this relationship in my life. But there's another critical aspect to it. The rabbis teach us that the reason Hashem created the world, or one of the reasons Hashem created the world from our perspective, is that he wanted a dira batachtonim. That Hashem wanted a dwelling place in this world. Meaning, Hashem created the world in order to give to us the benefit of having a relationship with him. He wants us to become closer to him. He wants that relationship. So he doesn't want to ding us. He doesn't want to punish us. He only wants to bring us closer to him. So in a certain sense, because that's the purpose for which the world was created, and the day of Rosh Hashanah is the day that Hashem is recreating the world, it's actually a day that we're recommitting ourselves to this relationship, and we're celebrating it almost like an anniversary. When a couple celebrates their anniversary, even if they were fighting, they put it aside and they come together because it's a day that they can look back at everything that they have, everything they've created, but more importantly, they can look forward to a continued future together, a shared vision, shared goals, a stronger relationship. Now, as a practical matter, when it comes to human beings, when there's been friction and there's been challenges, as much as we want to move past it and we work hard at doing that, it's not automatic, right? It's not so easy. When somebody's wronged you or done something that hurt you, as much as you want to forgive them, it takes time to get over that pain. That's not the way Hashem works. Hashem does not hold a grudge. Hashem does not feel pain the way that a human being does. From his perspective, the second that we recommit ourselves to the relationship, it's as good as it gets. Now, of course, we have to be sincere about it, and Hashem knows how sincere we're actually being. But once we've had that sincere recommitment, it is a celebration. The reason we treat Rosh Hashanah like a holiday is because it is one. It's a day that we celebrate what is the single most important thing in the world, our relationship with our Creator. It doesn't get any better than that. Of course we're going to wear all white. Of course we're going to make ourselves look our best. Of course we're going to eat good foods, because it's the day that we're celebrating that relationship. And this is also why the Torah really does not make any mention of what the day is. A guy is having some marital problems, so he goes to his rabbi and he tells Rabbi, my wife's unhappy with me, I'm not sure what to do. So the rabbi gives the guy some pretty simple, practical advice. Go buy your wife some flowers. The guy says, okay. Goes buy his wife some flowers, comes home, wife opens the door, he hands her flowers, she's very surprised. Oh, it's so nice. And the guy says, yeah, the rabbi said I should buy these for you. It's like, are you kidding me? You totally missed the point. And the same thing is true when you have a strong relationship. If a husband and wife are planning a night out for their anniversary, and the wife or the husband, one of them, they leave a note for their spouse. They don't write on that note, cannot wait until tonight, we're going to get together, we'll celebrate our shared life together and our shared values and our love for each other. Nobody writes that. You leave your wife a cute little note that says, I can't wait to see you tonight. You don't need to explain what you mean. Of course she knows what you mean. We don't explain in the Torah what it is that we're doing because it's that note, that love note that Hashem is leaving for us. He doesn't have to explain it. Of course we know what it is. This is the day that we're going to celebrate our shared relationship, our closeness. And from our perspective, we're going to decide and say, Hashem, I want to recommit myself to this relationship. Yeah, it hasn't been great until now, but you know what? I want to try to make it better. I'm going to try. I'm not going to fix all my problems overnight. I'm not going to cure all of my flaws, all of my faults in a day or a week or a month. But I'm telling you, Hashem, this is what I want. I want to recognize who you are in my life, who you are in the world, and that one of the most important, if not the most important relationship I can have in my life is with you, and I want to work a little bit harder at getting that. Hashem hears that. It's like, oh. As it were, the way we can describe, if we can describe Hashem this way, Hashem looks at us and says, that's all I want. And you want a sweet year, I'm going to give you everything it is that you want, everything it is that you need. You need parnasa, you need livelihood, I want to give that to you. You need better relationships, you need health, whatever it is. Hashem says, I want to give it to you. I want to make it as easy for you as I can. And of course, there are things in our lives that are never going to be the way that we want. And there are challenges that we have that Hashem knows ultimately are best for us. But in terms of walking into the day of Rosh Hashanah, this is judgment that we're talking about. We have to stop thinking of it as a judgment. What it really is a day that we can celebrate this relationship that we have with Hashem. We can celebrate the closeness that we, even if we don't have it yet, but it's a closeness that we want, a closeness that we can develop. When we do that, Hashem actually looks to us and brings us in closer. And that's how we can have the year that we're looking for. And so as I always try to do, I want to be as practical as I can. I'll give you a couple of different ideas of things you can do with the few days we have left until Rosh Hashanah. Number one, take a moment, look through the Rosh Hashanah prayers. Familiarize yourself with the machzor, with the prayer book. It'd be much easier the hours that you're sitting in shul if you know what it is that you're saying. It'll make it much more meaningful. It'll make it easier to connect. It'll make that day, the day that we recommit ourselves, it'll make it easier to do. Number two, try to make brachos in a way that will actually connect you and make you more conscious of Hashem. Right? Some of us, if we're making brachos, we're making them, we kind of mumble them through, we don't think about them, or maybe we're not making them, but just at least once a day, make sure that you're making a bracha on something. I like to tell people that take your morning coffee, and before you take a drink, take 5 to 8 to 10 seconds and say that bracha, that blessing, slowly with concentration. I'm telling you now, this is a tool that if you can do it on a regular basis, it will change your relationship with Hashem, guaranteed. And lastly, and this one is a little bit harder, but it's equally as important, try to smile at people. Try to make sure that you're treating everyone around you just a little bit nicer than you usually do. People who you might not necessarily get along with, try to give them a smile. Try to say a kind word, or if you can't say a kind word, don't say anything, but try to avoid saying anything biting or any nasty remarks. Because one of the things Hashem loves more than anything is when his children are treating each other nice, when his children are getting along. And there isn't almost a better way to prepare yourself for recommitting yourself to a relationship with Hashem than by actually making sure that you're correcting and fixing and strengthening your relationship with other Jews. And if we take all of these ideas, we think about it, we prepare ourselves. When we walk into Rosh Hashanah, we stand in front of Hashem and we say, Hashem, you're our king, you're our father. I want that relationship with you. Then Hashem will look at us, he'll smile, say, my children, I've been waiting for this. So happy to have you back home. And he'll bless us with a sweet new year, prosperous year, beautiful year, enjoyable year that we're all so much hoping for. I wish you an incredible, incredible Rosh Hashanah and a sweet, happy new year. Hashem should answer all of your prayers.